Alright, howdy folks, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to Yes, a Broken Arrow. Their beta is now live, you can check it out via the link in the description, link to their store page. All you have to do is just request access, download the game, and you have about 2 weeks to go crazy with deck building and checking out the game multiplayer. This beta test will not come with any single player or co-op game modes, however. Keep in mind that the servers are very unstable. I'm actually connected now for the first time, which is surprising because I keep getting disconnected, and is the main reason I haven't actually uploaded any gameplay of the multiplayer part yet, because I haven't actually been able to get a game. But I wanted to showcase the entire arsenal. In this video, I'm going to go over the American arsenal, because much like Wargame, much like Steel Division, you have to build yourself a deck, and you take that deck out into a fight against the enemy deck. However, like where in Wargame, you just, well, you select the Abrams, and, you know, that's great. You have an Abrams now, you know what I'm saying? But in this game, you can actually modify quite a lot of these vehicles. So on the left side, I've pinned the M3A3 CFV Bradley, which is its default configuration. We can, on the right side, I've already gotten one that has the engine upgrade, so our Bradley will go 15 forward faster and 5 backward faster, as you can see here. However, we can also upgrade it with the APS system, which is going to give it a little bit of APS protection, which will help intercept incoming projectiles. Besides that, by the way, keep your eye on the fact that the vehicle is starting to cost a little bit more now, like what, 30-ish%. We can even upgrade its armor package, having both its kinetic and heat armor displayed. Our heat armor is actually going up. If we take Busk 3, our heat and kinetic are going up even more, with 4 times more frontal protection heat-wise, and 5 times more heat protection on the side, and a little bit of extra kinetic energy protection on both the front and the side. But if you compare the price between the most baseline one and this, well, fully decked out, fully upgraded, every bell and whistle on there, you're looking at a 50% basically increase or more between the base one and this fully upgraded one. So it's going to be up to you when you're building your deck on how much you want to improve your units and keep your cost in mind. So maybe 145 points is a lot. So maybe we'll take the engine part off, sure. Then maybe we don't really care about the protection system. So now we're still paying 20 points more. We have lost the engine, though the extra speed, and we've also lost the APS system, but at least we have some extra armor. So these are all going to be decisions you have to make, whether it's about the armor, or for example here, if we take this off for the Force Recon, we can decide between Black Ops or Green Ops. And it does change their weapon loadout here in terms of infantry. This goes even as far as aircraft. You can basically decide what you want them to carry on each pylon, so you can make your plane as cheap or expensive as you want to make it. This Hornet now goes for 365, but if we take off all of these extra things and just keep it relatively cheap, then it's a very naked Hornet. But hey, now it's only 195. So there's a lot of decisions and options you can make. So as I said, today we're just going to go over every single unit in the American arsenal rather quickly, because there's a lot of units to look at, just to give you an idea of what is actually inside Broken Arrow. And we're going to go over all of their options. So the cavalry scouts come with a javelin. I believe there's a simple button here just to see what they are actually equipped with in a sort of quicker look. We can see everything down to the minute details over here. But if you just want to get a very quick look at it, you know, M4A1, M203 grenade launcher, javelin with some very basic stats, you can obviously do that as well. So maybe I'll leave this on just for a little bit less of a, a little bit less clutter on that right side. And the Force Recon, we already saw that. We have the Black Ops and Green Ops, which Black Ops is cheaper, but I guess it makes them a little bit less longer range because they get a shotgun and they lose the DMR, and they swap the AT4 for a Law, which is obviously probably a downgrade in terms of you know, modern AT weaponry. But it is, you do get more rockets, so that's an interesting choice. But the actual penetration from 450 goes down to just 66. So you are making a pretty big decision when you swap between Green Ops and Black Ops. Moving on with the Humvee GMV, here with the Mark 19, we can put a 50 cal machine gun on it, a minigun, or for technically, I guess, free, we can just keep an M240 machine gun on there. So you can make this go from 25 points up to almost twice as much at 40 points, but you do get a grenade launcher versus just an M240. Moving on from the Humvee GMV, we have the IFAV. This is equipped with either a 50 cal, a Mark 19, or a TOW 2, and obviously the price does very much increase between them. The LAV-25A1, this is the regular variant, however with extra armor, optics, and smoke. As you can see, we have smokes now, we have extra kinetic and heat energy, and we get a little bit better optic range from 1200 to 1400, but your vehicle does go from 55 to 70 points. There's all these options and decisions you're going to have to make, what units you want to focus on, where you want to maybe have your units be a little bit less expensive. The M1A2 SEP V2 TUA, we can't mess with any of its configuration, but we can show you a different feature now, which is the camo system. Now, this camo system is very much a work in progress. You have all of these Flecktarn camos here, but I promise you, you can actually swap between them. Now, there's not a massive variation between those top ones, but we do get a little bit of camo variation, which is cool because I don't think this does anything but just, you know, give you a visually different looking vehicle. But it's cool because you can kind of customize your armor to be exactly how you want, and there's a little bit more customization. I think as long as it stays realistic, I'm hoping we don't see like pink Hello Kitty tanks. I'm perfectly happy to see this. We already looked at some of these M3A2 and M3A3s, but you can just change the armor, you can change its protection system, so you can make this again quite expensive or relatively cheap. But keep in mind, you know, the more the unit costs, the less of them you can call in because you're only going to get a certain income. Moving on, we've already looked at the M3A3, so move on to the M7A3 B-Fist. Here we can get a standard one with better eyesight or better range on the optics, and also one has a upgraded engine as well, which gives you both the optics and the engine. But we can also then increase the armor again, and we can give it a protection system, making this, well, what, 65 points more expensive. So from 145, we can go all the way down to just 80, which is an increase of more than, well, 50%. So that's a very expensive unit that's going to hurt to lose if you fully upgrade it, but it's also probably going to be a lot more usable when it's fully upgraded. Moving on to the M981 Fist V. This one comes with an armor package upgrade to have slats and smoke. The slats increase a little bit of kinetic protection, actually surprisingly a lot, considering it's just a couple of, you know, heat protection plates, but it does give you a lot more heat protection, going from 20 to, for example, 140 or 30 to 160 on the front and the side, with the rear going from 20 to 6 times more at 120. But just keep in mind, it makes you a little bit more expensive. I'm actually curious to see why they haven't slowed this vehicle down. I think it would be cool to see if a vehicle got add-on armor, but you didn't add an engine upgrade. That's not available on this vehicle, but it will be interesting to see if armor, which, you know, this would add a little bit of weight to the vehicle, if it slowed the vehicle down maybe even like 10%, and that you could kind of counteract that by using an engine upgrade. Because right now, besides the 10-point cost, there is no downside to this. So I wish there was maybe a slight downside into speed, even like 5 or 10%, just to sort of give you a reason to reconsider these extra 10 points. Last but not least, the Scout Snipers. They come with either an M107, which is going to have a little bit of penetration when it comes to vehicles, or we can just use the regular M40. Now, the M107 is going to have a little bit more range, a little bit more penetration, but in the end, it's going to cost you 10 extra points. Moving on to the infantry category, we have the CAAT Dragon. They come with a Dragon anti-tank launcher, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be maybe a work in progress, the way they're holding these 50 cals, but obviously a pretty defensive squad with some good 50 cal firepower. Moving on to the Marine Raiders, they have the door kicker option or the standoff option, and the name kind of implies it already. Their standoff is going to be a little bit more long range with the Mark 48 with the sight, a Mark 110 DMR, as well as a Gustav. Or if you don't want to spend the extra 20 points, you are going to have a shotgun, a grenade launcher, and a sort of crappier law. So you can kind of directly see, hey, this is the setup in a straight open field and have them defend it, versus, hey, you guys are going into a town and messing stuff up. That's really the sort of difference between these two setups. Regular Marines who are equipped with the, I guess, future, I believe the Marines were trying to swap to this M27 IAR. I'm not actually 100% sure if that has completely happened yet. which is a little weird because this Cat Dragon squad has M16A4s, but these Marines have the new M27 IAR, so I'm not really 100% sure how that works. Then we have the Mech Engineers. They have the SMA-D, as well as shotguns and M4A1s. These guys are going to be really going into a town and messing stuff up. I'm wondering if this is the type that has... Okay, it has HE. So this is really like an anti-infantry unit that you send in and you blast through a town. Mechanized riflemen, M4A1s, M2A3s. These are your regular infantry squad. Not really focused on anything specifically, just probably like an all-round decent unit. Of course, your army is going to need anti-air. Now, the infantry-based anti-air will probably be pretty decent against helicopters, potentially also against aircraft, but I would maybe rely on actual dedicated anti-plane AA base for that, but the option exists. Mechanized riflemen who come with a medium machine gun in the form of the M240L, so we have two of them, a really good defensive machine gun unit, but they lack any AT, so that's going to probably cost them in case they come up even against a BTR or a BMP. Then we have the SMA. We can set this in the SMA or the SRA variant, which does give you a 10 extra point cost, but this gives them the SRA, which is, I'm pretty sure, sort of an equivalent to a Javelin, which hits units on the top. So there's a whole bunch of different things you have to look at. For example, you only get 4 rockets, whereas the SRA, they get 12. So you're going to have to keep in mind how it works, how many units you want to engage, how often you have to resupply these units, how autonomous they can be without your immediate supervision. But obviously the SMA has a 400 meter range, whereas the SRA has a 600 meter range. Accuracy is 100%, whereas on the SMA, the accuracy isn't even a stat, so I'm assuming it's not 100%. So there's a lot of different options and variations to take in mind. You know, ammo loadout, the cost. So it's going to be a lot of choosing and picking to what you think is going to work best for you, and maybe even talk to your teammates if you are playing in a team to decide, hey, maybe I should bring the more CQB infantry and I'll focus on the city while you focus on the outside of the city, so you bring the more long-range infantry. Then our TOW team, we have the TOW 2 anti-tank missile, or we can go for the TOW 2B, which are top attack missiles, but obviously the name kind of implies already it's going to be top-down attack, but it does have a little bit more of a cost increase. But there are going to be differences here in the variations between heat protection and kinetic protection. So you can try to snipe units that have worse kinetic protection with these TOW 2Bs, or you can try to focus more on certain vehicles with the heat type protection from the TOW 2A. For the vehicle tab in the arsenal, we have the M-Track or the AAVP. This one comes with basic armor or an upgraded armor, which really doesn't add a whole lot. But for 10 points, it's wondering if it's worth it. It does increase its health points a little, gives you a little bit extra armor, but in the end, it's still just an Amtrak, so whether or not that's worth it is really up to you. The standard Humvee, which comes with a B-kit armor, it doesn't actually seem to cost more, but the only thing you do lose is this is a airdroppable unit, and with the B-kit armor, it isn't. So that's something you're going to have to consider when you build your deck. This is not something you select specifically. You don't just bring this unit out randomly. This is a unit that you'll bring out when you want to, for example, bring infantry onto the battlefield, and you can actually upgrade or change their unit that they come in on, whether it's an LAV or a Humvee, and in this case, swapping between the armors will remove the ability to airdrop this one. The LAV-AT, this one comes with a different weapon package, the LAV-AT Modernized, as well as a different armor package, which gives it, a little bit extra armor and a smoke option. The M113, which has a Mark 19 or a 50 cal, as well as slat armor plus smoke. Again, a lot of different variations. It's going to give you a lot more heat protection, but the kinetic energy rounds are just going to straight on go through this tin box. The M1283 AMPV. I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be maybe still, although I'm not sure if it's still in progress or if it's discontinued, a follow-up to the M113 units in U.S. military service. We have different weapon packages, even a basically increasing the cost by more than 125%. This is now equipped with both a Bushmaster and a Javelin, but your vehicle goes from being 40 points to 90 points. You can also just give it a regular Bushmaster without the Javelin or a Mark 19 grenade launcher. So if we go for the full upgrade package with reactive armor, we went from a 40-point unit to a 100-point unit. So keep that in mind as you progress through these upgrade systems, because you don't want to spend too much points on one unit and then realize, oops, I have no money left in battle to, react on certain situations. The M1A1 FEP with a Tusk armor or the irregular baseline armor, it just increases the heat and kinetic protection, gives it a little bit more health. Again, I wish there was maybe a slight debuff to taking these to the speed. It just makes more sense to me. I'm going to take a jammer, which now gives you a jamming capability as well. So I believe that just reduces the accuracy of incoming projectiles, if I remember reading correctly in previous dev blogs. The M1A1HC, same sort of stuff. You can give it jammers and a Tusk protection. This is just a whole bunch of different Abramses. Same for the M1A2 Abrams. So you can give the regular Tusk or the Tusk 2 armor package. This looks very freaking cool, I'll say that. I'm not a big fan of what the Abrams looks, but this does look really freaking cool. You have a lot of extra armor. So, I mean, look at that. You go from 250 to 700. So you're going to be very protected against heat. Kinetic, though, you do go up, what, about 50%. So that's actually not a terrible upgrade. But your unit does become 25 points more expensive. The M1A2 SEP, same thing, Tusk or Tusk 2. The M1A2 SEP V2. And this one, yeah, we can really go crazy. The Tusk armor package, the Tusk 2 armor package, a trophy active defense system, or the Tusk 1 plus trophy, or the Tusk 2 plus trophy. So that is this one plus this one, adding 100 points to this unit that's already 255, still adding about 30% on the cost, but you do get a very dangerous Abrams. The M1A2 SEB V3, we can do the same thing. We can go super crazy at almost 400 points. And then the M2A2 Bradley. This is a standard Bradley with busk and some extra protection on the vehicle. This is a specific engineering one, the M2A2 Bradley ESV, which this gives you a little bit of extra protection on the upgrades. And I think these are specifically meant to go with the engineer teams. The M2A3 Bradley, which I think we saw pretty much in the Recon tab, but this is a regular Bradley, like a Recon focus one. And then the M2A3 Bradley ESV, with pretty much, again, we can go crazy on the upgrades and make this a pretty expensive vehicle. What, adding 55 points to this 120 cost. We take these off, we're now at 65. So you can really make these vehicles basically cost twice as much. If it's worth it, it's going to depend on your situation, how you want to play, and say you're playing in a team, you can focus on the more expensive tanks that are fully upgraded with everything if you're taking them out in the open, whereas I would maybe, focus on a different variant of these if you're taking them more out into the city or if you're really focusing on some infantry combat. Under support, we have the LAVAD or Air Defense, where we can just add smoke and some armor. Moving on to the LAVL, which I'm pretty sure is a logistics or supply vehicle. We can change its main weapon, but hey, keep in mind this is going to be a vehicle that probably doesn't see much combat, so why make it more expensive than it already is? I wouldn't even worry about armor or weapons on this thing at all, because if this sees combat, you're in a lot more trouble than you're probably willing to admit. We have the LAV with a mortar. We can upgrade the armor package again on this. Question is it worth upgrading the armor? Maybe if you're worried about counter-artillerying, but just focus on not getting hit, The LVSR. This one can upgrade, again, another supply vehicle with different defensive machine guns and weapons, even a grenade launcher, but then you're spending a lot of money on protecting a vehicle that hopefully doesn't see much combat. The M109A6 Paladin can actually swap its ammo type between high explosives and cluster. You can see here this is a top-down version. This is just a regular explosion version. We even have some laser-guided missiles, as well as it even says here that these are cluster type of ammunitions. There's no difference in cost, but one is going to be more effective against infantry or buildings, and one is obviously going to be more effective against scattered troops or even vehicles like light vehicles or tanks. the M1287 MCV. Another mortar carrier. This time we can mostly go crazy. We can give it reactive armor. We can give it a remote controlled weapon system like a machine gun or grenade launcher. And we can even swap between mostly HE, mostly smoke, or guided rounds. So you can see here it goes from 45 HE and 24 smoke to the other way around. So you can focus on, hey, is it going to be a supportive one where I'm pushing infantry across an open front and I need smoke? Or am I expecting to be fighting in the city and I don't need as much smoke as much as I need guided rounds for accurate shots, or just HE to obliterate your enemies out in wherever. The M142 HIMARS made relatively famous, I think, due to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine with different armor upgrades, as well as with high explosive, cluster, ATACMS, and PRSM. I don't know what PRSM stands for, but it looks to be a relatively big heat type explosive compared to that actually does twice the amount of pen as the regular HE explosive. But you do get less rockets, because this one seems to only get 2 and this one gets 6. So keep that in mind as you're going threes with only one ATACMS rocket, but it is obviously going to have a lot of heat penetration. The M136 PIVADS, this one you can upgrade the armor on it. Personally, I'm like, hey, if this thing gets hit, it's probably not going to last very long anyways. This might not be something I would personally consider doing, but hey, your mileage may vary. The M2070 A1 MLRS. Again, we can swap the types of warhead, cluster, or ATACMS. This one is going to have 2 ATACMS and not just 12 rockets. But hey, pretty interesting to load ATACMS on this, but you are going to increase the cost on this from 250 to 300, adding 20% to the cost of calling this unit in. So keep that in mind as you do that. It's just going to get more expensive. We have a hauler, the M54-8A3. This looks like, again, like some sort of supply vehicle. We can just add some machine guns to it. Again, I don't really know why you would do that. You're just wasting your money, in my personal opinion. The M6A2 linebacker, which is a Bradley with a Stinger missile launcher on the side. Here we can just add some armor to it. And then we can even go for the M6A3M Shorad. I mean, this thing looks freaking crazy. Or the M6A4 Shorad. I've actually never heard of these, but they just look insanely crazy. And I'm not sure what the difference is. It looks like we get Hellfire missiles on this thing. Wait, we can fire... Are we talking Hellfires like an Apache Hellfire? Okay, this is kind of a crazy unit, but you do have to upgrade your unit by 20 points. And keep in mind that losing this is going to hurt more when versus losing the regular linebacker. The MTVR, a truck to transport infantry in, actually relatively expensive already just for, you know, a truck to transport like supplies or infantry. But we can upgrade it if you wanted to make it more expensive. Extra armor doesn't seem to do anything to it, which is, again, the only real downside here, I think, is that you're not going to be able to like lift it with a helicopter, which because the heavy lift number disappears. So it wouldn't surprise me if that's what that means. If this heavy lift unit, heavy lift weight thing disappears, we can no longer lift it with a helicopter. And then we have the option, obviously, to add some heavy machine guns, 50 cals, even grenade launchers. Moving on to the helicopters, the planes are not the only things you can customize their pylons of. So here we have the AH-1W Super Cobra. We can change the inner pylons from regular Hydras to 38 Hydras. We can change the outer pylons to have nothing, to make it pretty cheap, to 14 Hydras, 38 Hydras, 4 2AT, 8 2AT, 8 Hellfires, 2 AIM-9 Sidewinders, or 2 AGM-122 sidearms. So a lot of different types of variants, from seed to destroy, you know, Raider AA, to focus on enemy aircraft or enemy helicopters, to focusing on enemy heavy tanks. Maybe you want to spend this more on like lighter vehicles like BMPs. So this Super Cobra can be as cheap as 95 points, or we can make this 215 points with a focus on AT, or a focus on seed, or a focus on AA. So a lot of cool options, and it means that when you see one of these flying around, you're not going to know exactly what it's equipped with if it's an enemy one. So you're not going to know, is that Cobra going to shoot down my Su-27, or is it going to one-shot my T-90? And I think that's a really cool sort of random aspect of the game that you're going to be seeing as you play multiplayer. Then the AH-1Z Viper, again, we can change this all out to be very expensive, actually, at $350 with sidearms or sidewinders, with Hydras, or the APKWS guided rockets, or 8 Hellfires, as well as the same on this side, so we can really go crazy on these APKWs, or we can just go crazy on Hydras if you really wanted to. And now we're just a relatively cheap helicopter with, what, 28 Hydras, and obviously you're always going to have that 20mm chain gun on the front. Then the Super Stallion. This is a supply/transport helicopter. So you pick an infantry squad, you say, hey, I want you to be transported in with the Super Stallion. They fly in, and this thing then comes back and gets refunded if it makes it back. But we can actually add some weapons to it, and this actually makes sense because this may be going to see some actual combat. Either a 240 here on, I think on the, oh, I kind of figured it would be on the back, but it's here on the door. Either a 240, a minigun, or a GAU-21 HMG. I really thought it was going to be a rear door gunner, but it's actually just a regular side gunner. Then the King Stallion, a little bigger, same weapon packages. I believe this thing, as you can see here, it can carry more, so it has more lift weight, and that's really basically, if you compare these two, we're actually going to be able to compare them like right now. There is a little bit more speed on the bigger one, but mostly it's going to be, it can carry just a little bit more of weight, so you can put more units into it, or more vehicles, so that's, or heavier vehicles you can lift with the more expensive one. Moving on to the MV-22 Osprey, this comes with standard a GAU-21 on the tail ramp, but we can even give this a GAU minigun right underneath right there, which we can either, you know, have or not have for 10 points. It's going to be a little bit more of a useful weapon comparing it to the back, because this one can obviously shoot to the rear. This one at least can rotate and shoot targets that are in or around and not just directly behind the helicopter, or VTOL, I should say, I guess. Then the UH-1Y Venom, which comes with door guns, which you can actually swap from 240s to M134 miniguns. As well, we can even give it some pylons for close support, some Hydra rockets, or some APKWS guided rockets. Moving on to the final unit category, the aircraft for the US. Here, the AV-8B Harrier 2+. You can really go crazy. You can add designator pods with a GAU-12. You can add an ECM pod, a designation pod without the GAU-12, or the GAU-12 by itself. You can make it as cheap or as expensive as you want. And, you know, if you add, say, a bunch of laser-guided JDAM, GBUs, another set here, and another set of, let's do some AMRAMs over here, and your Harrier now goes for $340. Whereas if we take everything off and make it as cheap as possible, though this isn't, we can give it some fuel tanks, that'll make it really, really cheap. And right now our Harrier only costs $145, but it only comes with, well, a couple of JDAMs. So you have those choices to make them as expensive or as multi-role or as specifically anti-air or specifically bomb. Like, this is a heavy bomber right now, the AV-8B Night Attack, but we can give it some Snake Eyes. We can give it a bunch of Zuni rockets. And now we've suddenly turned this thing into like what feels like a P-47 loaded with bombs and rockets, but it's not going to be very good against aircraft. So we can throw some Sidewinders on there, or we could take this off and throw it on a GAU-12 equalizer. And now we have totally changed, if I throw some Mavericks on here, we have totally changed this Harrier's capabilities. Now it went from a full bomber to having a GAU, a bunch of Sidewinders to deal with air threats, and even some Mavericks to deal with ground targets. So there's a lot of options, and it's going to be cool to see how people customize these to fit within their, you know, their deck of choice. The EA-6B Prowler, this one is going to have, I believe these are they're seats that are anti-radar missiles. That's going to be very useful for this. But as you can see, right now we don't have ACM or ECM. So we want to have ECM, we're going to have to either have no harms, or we're going to have to swap and only have one harm and one ECM pod. And over here we can do the same thing. It makes it more expensive, but right now we have 3 harms, 1 ECM, or you can go for 1 fuel tank and 1 harm. But I feel like if you're going to go on a seed mission, you probably want that ECM. So you can even just do that and say, yo, 2 ECM pods and 2 harms, but now you don't have a fuel pod. So again, lots of choices, lots of options. And personally, I'm I'm even excited to show you again. There's a couple of skins here, but I think that these are obviously still mostly work in progress. Maybe not so much the skins, but the menu is, but you can just change the way the look of this thing. And it is cool to just have a little bit of a different option to mess around with your units to make them a little bit more personal. The FA-18C Hornet with a whole bunch of, in this case, AMRAAMs and Zuni rockets. But hey, do you want to make this, you know, a specific anti-air focused F-18, boom, you're done. But you can also go crazy again and take that off and just put on some Zuni rockets. I don't know who would fly this. This seems very like, you know, African warlord type deal. But if you wanted to make your Hornet have nothing but Zuni rockets, you can go crazy if you want. Then the 18D Hornet can actually add some massive 2,000-pound Mark 48 or Mark 84 heavy bombs on it. We can add Sparrows and AMRAAMs, Snake Eyes, and even add some fire bombs. I'm assuming these are going to be napalm, and you know, you get what I'm trying to say. You can go crazy. The F-35, which has interesting enough, has those bays underneath here, so we can go for Stormbreakers, JSOW bombs, laser guided JDAMs, or just a simple AMRAAM if you want to keep it relatively cheap and, you know, anti-air focused. But we can throw some JSOW 1,000-pound bombs in here, and our thing just became a lot more expensive. But hey, now it can focus on engaging ground targets and not so much as air targets. And then last but not least, the KC-130J Harvest Hawk. I believe we have seen the AC-130 teased, but it's not in the game as of now. But I do believe hearing or seeing something about it. In this case, the KC-130J can hold some 10 Griffin missiles, as well as either 4 extra Hellfires or 4 GBU-53 Stormbreakers. Now, keep in mind, again, the cost, you're going to see this go from 200 to 280 if you make it that expensive, either, well, with the Stormbreakers or Hellfires, 280, 250, depending on 230, depending on what you want to add, but it's going to give you just a little bit more flexibility when you call one of these in. Just keep in mind that when you lose one of these, you've just wasted an extra 80 points versus the base 200. So that was just a quick look at the American units in the arsenal in Broken Arrow. In the next video, we're going to take a look at all of the Russian vehicles, and I'm hoping to showcase you some actual multiplayer gameplay very soon. Actually, I'm online right now, but I have been having, like I said earlier, just online, offline issues with connecting. So I'm hoping to show you some gameplay soon. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.